The first time Ada met Chris, she knew she had to keep her past buried. She was only 17 when she made the biggest mistake of her life, falling for a man who swore he loved her, only to abandon her when she became pregnant. Her mother, ashamed of the disgrace, sent her away to have the baby in secret. When the child, a little girl named Grace, was born, Ada barely had time to hold her before she was forced to leave her behind with distant relatives and return home as though nothing had happened. She vowed never to speak of it again. Years later, she met Chris, a kind and successful man who loved her deeply. He never asked too many questions about her past, and she never offered any answers. When he proposed, she swore to be the perfect wife, the woman he deserved. But fate had other plans. After 5 years of marriage, Ada still had not conceived. No child's laughter filled their home, no tiny feet pattered across the floor. She tried everything, prayers, herbs, doctors, but nothing worked. Soon, the whispers began. Maybe she has offended the gods. Maybe her past is haunting her. Maybe Chris should find another woman. At first, Chris ignored them. But his friends were relentless. You are the only son of your father. You need an heir. Just one child. You don't even have to marry her. Do it quietly. No one has to know. Ada saw the change in her husband. The way he avoided her eyes. The way he came home late, smelling of whiskey and regret. Then one night, he sat beside her, voice heavy with guilt. I love you, Ada, he said. But I need a child. Her heart shattered, but she nodded. She had no choice. Chris didn't want just any woman. He wanted someone discreet, someone young, someone who wouldn't cause trouble. That's how he met Grace. She was beautiful, with striking eyes that felt oddly familiar. She was quiet, mysterious, and when she smiled, there was something in her gaze, something knowing. Grace played her role well. She seduced him effortlessly, and soon, she was pregnant. But as the months passed, Chris began to notice strange things. She knew too much about his life. She called him by pet names only Ada used. One day, he found her staring at a picture of Ada on his phone, a cruel smile on her lips. Then came the night of the storm. Lightning flashed through the windows as Chris sat in the living room, thinking about his unborn child. Grace walked in, her face unreadable. Chris, she said softly. Do you know who I am? He frowned. What do you mean? She stepped closer, resting a hand on her belly. And then, she whispered 4 words that turned his world to dust. I am Ada's daughter. The room spun. His heart stopped. No, he croaked. That's impossible. She smiled, slow and deliberate. Ask your wife? Chris stormed into their bedroom, shaking Ada awake. His face was twisted with rage, pain, and something darker. Tell me the truth, he demanded. Who is Grace? Ada's mouth went dry. Tell me, Ada. Is she your daughter? Tears burned in her eyes. There was no escape now. Yes, she whispered. Chris staggered back as if struck. You lied to me. For years, you lied to me. I was scared, Ada sobbed. I thought you'd leave me. I thought you let me sleep with my own stepdaughter. His voice broke. Ada dropped to her knees. I didn't know she would, Chris let out a bitter laugh. Of course you knew. You brought this curse into my life. Grace left the next day, carrying the child that would always remind Chris of the greatest betrayal of his life. Ada begged for forgiveness, but Chris was a broken man. The love they once had was now tainted, poisoned by the truth she had buried.